Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Rajgopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello and welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. I'm of course Sri, co-founder and co-host of the CPG Guys and co-founder and partner of Think Blue. Your key to unlocking your profitability potential is builders, connectors, and amplifiers. We shape the future of commerce to drive your growth. Please do listen to my older daughter Ria Raj's music at www.riaraj.com. That's RHEARAJ, and my younger daughter Lara Raj as a member of the Geffen Records Universal Music Group band, newly formed Cat's Eye with a K. While my wife Kavita Raj has her own podcast, Lights, Camera, Convo on iHeartRadio and all streaming platforms in June, all four of us will be on media and broadcasting via our own podcasts and radio shows. Joining me today is none other than my best friend, Mr. Peter V.S. Bond, and he's not co-hosting this podcast. He serves as Partnership Acceleration Lead at Flywheel, division of Omnicom that helps enterprise brands improve their SEO and SEM, growing their e-commerce businesses. Before I say hello to you, Peter, Dodgers had a pretty good streak with the Mets. At the time of this recording, I was at all the way 2 hours up and down Anaheim watching the Angels yesterday. Clay Holmes gave us a heart attack, but at the end of the day, the Yankees won 2-1, leading the divisions respectively.
I say we got a 6.5 game lead over the Giants. You wish you had that over your second place team, but it's still good, Sri. I was thinking a couple years ago when I came out to see you and we went to a game at Chavez, if we looked out the left field line towards the Hollywood Hills, we'd see the Hollywood sign, right? But if we didn't look that far, we looked a little bit closer out the left field parking lot. There were two words that were emblazoned on the hillside. You know what those two words were? They were Think Blue. How apropos now that you have started this venture with our friends Parag and Manish around strategic consulting. I love the fact that even though you're a Yankees fan, LA is just seeping into your blood system, Sri. It's only a matter of time before you're cheering for the boys from Brooklyn. Reconstituted, and
maybe this hat is getting outdated because this was 25,000 followers a long time ago.
Very old.
I think you can send me one which says Think Blue now, Peter.
Think Blue, I got it.
I forgot about that moment, but you're 100% right. It did say Think. I mean, like, what are the odds? But here we are. Of course, he wanted to say he's 6.5 games ahead of the Giants, but we're actually 2 games ahead of the Dodgers. Just a reminder.
All it matters is you got to win your division, Sri, and I got a little bit more buffer space than y'all have.
You got buffer, but we'll win the division out. There's no starting rotation like the Yankees today. But before we get to our guest, we want to ask you to help spread the word about this community we've created in the CPG Guys. Hey, wait a sec. We always told y'all it's a baseball podcast that also talks about omnichannel retail and brands and products. Just kidding, guys. Beyond sharing a podcast with your friends, if you're using Apple Podcasts or Spotify as your preferred listening platform, leave us a rating as it helps feed the algorithm that makes us more findable by CPG retail people like you, looking for both education and, of course, entertainment. He said Hollywood enough times. We're happy that the CPG Guys is part of an impressive collective of highly rated podcasts, including CPG Scoop with Risa and Jennifer, and the FMCG Guys with Daniel, Efrain, and Christine. Finally, we're incredibly proud of our allyship with Next Up, whose mission is to advance the cause of women in business and to promote gender equality in the workplace. Next Up has terrific educational networking resources available to its members. I, of course, serve on the board as of today, as a board of directors leading the development committee on Next Up. Links to our podcast, our sister cast, our landing page on Next Up, and the social media profiles of my daughters, Ria, Laura, my wife's podcast may be found digital liner notes of this episode. So, on to the main event. Today's CPG.
Sri, do we need to add your cat's Instagram page to that?
Absolutely. Now I would say it here, except nobody.
Are we running out of
nobody
space?
will be able to spell it. It's Zayn Zorazumi. That's ZAYNZORAZUMI. The 3 little kittens of the Raj Mahal. Like that?
You know, I was kidding, but you're serious. You're like you're going to go in after this episode and you're going to backdate all the old episodes and add in their LinkedIn.
I mean, they've got 100 posts and they have 500 followers.
They have more followers than I have.
They slow blink and people react. But today's CPG landscape has accelerated a decade in the last 4 years since the beginning of the pandemic as far as omnichannel retail is concerned. Maturity with the digital shopper habits and how to build a path to purchase is emerging in the CPG industry. But along with this, tech advances in health have been significant in the last 4 years. Natural treatments, pre-surgery, post-surgery, remedial, long-term care, short-term mends, all have seen significant advances. One such platform that I helped incubate way back in 2020 summer was called Upgrade, a natural wellness product for pain relief. In the last 2 years, it merged with Men Nutrition to form a true care provider for the consumer called Mend, with a tagline that says, the healing company, scientifically designed solutions for every stage of your health journey. In this episode, we're bringing you the story of none other than second-time guest Eziah Syed and the scale he's been able to develop for men in the last 4 years. Personally, this is an important episode to me, not just because I was advising the startup of a natural wellness company, but in my own healthcare journey and the healthcare journey of America. I think we need to have an important debate. What is the role of natural wellness? And that's what we're going to get to with Eziah today. Eziah, all the way from New York City. Welcome, man. How you doing?
Sir, thank you for having me. It's a joy and a delight to be talking about a very important topic with you and Peter. I enjoyed our last conversation. I know we'll get deep into the philosophy, the science, and why we think this is really important in the current state of the world. So looking forward to the discussion.
Interestingly, there's not a lot of natural wellness company. You may be in a state of one here, which actually can connect natural wellness back to clinical trials. So we're going to get into some details on that. But thank you for joining us today. I'm incredibly excited to speak with you today about the space of healthcare. I've been watching and sometimes incubating, but yet have been amazed at the ascent of natural healing, last 4 or 5 years. Before we get to the detailed questions we have prepared for you today, Zai, it would be great if you give us a brief overview of where Mend is and your role there.
Yeah, I'm CEO and co-founder. I'm very privileged to have co-founders who are deeply passionate about our company, our mission, and our purpose. We are post-Series A, so we've raised a very significant amount of capital, and we're heading from build mode, where we've invested really heavily in a technology platform, a food as medicine, evidence-based nutrition platform, behavioral models, a clinical services model, all under a single integrated offering that we think is a complete game changer in healthcare. So we've put a lot of money into building that capability, and now we're commercializing with 15 plus provider contracts. We were very proud to announce a couple of weeks ago that the third largest orthopedic provider in the entire country, Ortho Lone Star, has gone from a 14-month pilot, seeing significant impact on what we call the three dimensions, which is patient experience, patient outcomes, and profitability. And as a result of that triple aim, have decided to scale the platform across the entire network, which is 180 surgeons, 300 plus providers. And I think that is a symbol and symptomatic of the impact that we're having and how unique our platform is. And I'm happy to unpack that for you as we get through the discussion.
Thank you for that, Eziah. In the digital liner notes of this episode, we'll place links to your LinkedIn profile, your company's LinkedIn page, as well as Mend's website. That way, the people listening can easily connect back with you, as well as if they're interested in natural wellness and looking through the product portfolio, they can simply do it from the smartphone when they're listening to this podcast. So let's talk about your career and how you got here and why natural wellness in the first place. You've been at Deloitte, you've been at Citibank, you've done a few startups, and now Mend. Take us through your career journey and how it led to Mend, and what advice would you give for others entering natural wellness? I mean, it's not an easy space.
There's so much going on in the space, but while not easy, it is also, given the state of the set of challenges that we face in society with health and wellness, illness, healthcare, it is also a space that is ripe with significant opportunities where I think lots of millionaires and billionaires will be created when we create the right solution. So I have always been passionate about innovation and strategy, and coming out of my undergraduate years, fell in love with a company that had gone digital. This is way back in 1995. I'm aging myself, 1995, 96. They decided to go all digital. And I thought that was really quite forward-looking, and proposed to them, hey, look, I know you don't have budget to hire anybody, but I'll get government funding. Just hire me. I see that you're outsourcing your research. I'll bring research in-house. I'll make you a bunch of money. And that's how I started. And it was in the context of that first job that I and we, with the founders of the ad agency, recognized that there was this huge proliferation of digital media, and yet there was no systematic or systematic way of really thinking about how you manage this proliferation of digital media. And we started a software company called Digital Graffiti, raised a bunch of money. And that was really the catalyst for me to really have the entrepreneurial itch for the rest of my life, quite frankly. But I knew that I needed some of the discipline of, why did big companies become successful, and what do they do that's different, and what do they do that allows them to become as successful as they are? So I very consciously, coming out of grad school, doing my MBA, said I need to work in a large firm. And so I went to work for Citibank, where I spent roughly 7-8 years in a variety of different strategy innovation roles. That led me to another very fast growing startup called Dynamics Inc. out of Pittsburgh. We raised $110 million post through Series C. We were best in show at CES 3 times consecutively in personal electronics, a very disruptive technology company. And then I got recruited by Deloitte. And at Deloitte, I was in a global strategy innovation role, looking at enterprise level strategy across the globe for our firms and for clients. It was during that time, Sri, that I had a number of illnesses in family. My mom got quite ill with cancer. My brother had a very serious fall from a waterfall in upstate New York, 80 feet. And then I got injured training for the New York Marathon. I got a stress fracture in my foot. And it was across those 3 experiences, with illness, with injury, with our episodes of care, that I really started thinking about some of the gaps. And one of the big gaps was this area that you were talking about, which is this natural medicine. There was a huge body of literature all over the internet talking about the role of nutrition as it relates to healing. But invariably, the articles are saying these are the 15 foods you need to eat. Now, that's very well intentioned, but is it practical? Is an injured person that's about to have a major surgery going to go to the grocery store and buy those 15 foods and conscientiously eat them? And the answer is probably not. But what I started to think about as a business person is, what were the right compounds? How could I put them into a solution? And then how could I put enough of evidence and science behind it that it would be accepted by mainstream medicine? And that's what we've been working very hard on as part of our story, which is developing evidence-based, very scientifically studied, rigorously developed solutions that mainstream medicine will deploy, so that they have another modality, not just pharma, as the go-to for things. But we now have something that lives in the natural world, but is developed with a level of rigor that mainstream medicine can trust. And so that's what we've been working really hard on. To your final question, which is, how would you advise folks that are interested in this space? We're in a society where we're spending $4.3 trillion on healthcare. The obesity rates in society, if you look at childhood obesity rates, around 20%. You jump up to 20 years old or older, it jumps up to 40%. Metabolic syndrome, more than 40%. 60% of our adults are living with multiple chronic conditions. I could go on and on and on. We are headed into a disaster. We're sleepwalking into a crisis. We're already spending more than any industrialized nation on illness. So we're in a sick care system. We do a really great job of getting our people sick. And then we spent inordinate amounts of money to get the knife out. And that's not a sustainable system. We're going to face the heartache and the headache and the extreme pain sooner or later. We already are. And so what I would say to entrepreneurs that are thinking about this space is, the solutions are not intractable. They're difficult, they're complicated, but there are solutions that we can develop intelligently that will have an impact. And so there's enormous, enormous opportunity here. And we need as many bright minds, as many innovators participating in this space.
Eziah, welcome back to the podcast. Am I to understand that you're a Canadian expat?
I am Canadian. I was raised in a small town east of Toronto called Kingston, Ontario. And then I went to Toronto during my schooling. So most of my family is in Toronto. And then I moved here kind of after doing my schooling into New York in 2003 full time.
While you all can geek out about saying project together, I'm curious how you know Peter. Because I missed that one.
I looked at his background. He went to McMaster, and then he got his MBA from Western, where I was born. I was born in London, Ontario.
Oh, cool.
When my parents were both teaching at Western. So always good to see a fellow Canadian expat make his way on the lower 48. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a fantastic school, as you know, and London's an amazing college town. For anyone that doesn't know about it, it really revolves around the University of Western Ontario's culture. So it was a fabulous experience. So
thanks for that background check and giving us an understanding for kind of the origin story of what you've been focused on. Well, let's get to the industry that your business is focused upon. What do you see as some of the critical challenges in health and healthcare that are transpiring today? You made a really poignant comment when you said, listen, we're spending $4 trillion in healthcare spending right now, and the surgical approach to dealing with healthcare is not sustainable. But I'd like to hear from you what you think are the big challenges, and I'd also love to know particularly how you came up with the name MEND. What's behind that?
Yeah, let me just contextualize that with, again, numbers, because we're doing a really fabulous job of getting people sick, and there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. If you look at, just through an evolutionary lens, what's happened in 98% of our history, human history, if you go back 250,000 years, was a fairly constant in terms of how we lived. We were in high energy expenditure environments outdoors. We were physical. We were upright. We were under the sun, in the environment, around the nature, and we were hunting and gathering for foods. And that was constant for 98% of our history. And then early agriculture came, and agriculture, industrial revolution, et cetera. And in 2% of our time, we upended everything. The nature of the food went from whole foods, organic, et cetera, to 60% of our diet is wholly processed foods. If we went from being outdoors to only 7% of our time is outdoors. We spend 8 hours sitting sedentary, so on and so forth. So it's not surprising that with the way that we eat, the stressors and the lifestyles that we live, the biology of the system has not kept up, and illness rates have gone through the roof. Now, sugar is unavoidable. It's in everything we eat. It's hidden. The average U.S. consumer consumes 10x the daily requirement or the daily allowance for sugar. That is a crisis. How much time are we spending on really thinking about that problem and talking about that problem? So the big challenge, there's kind of two ways to think about this crisis. One is we're doing a really good job of getting people sick, and that's an unsustainable trajectory. The other is when we get people sick and we put them into acute care is under very significant stress. If you look at the P&Ls of hospital systems, they've been bleeding money for years. And when they do make money, they squeeze out a razor-thin margin. Their staff are burned out. There are many clinicians just leaving the profession altogether. So 30% of nurses left altogether during COVID. We're not producing as many doctors as we need. And so there's going to be a doctor shortfall. And so if you think about the convergence of those two things, lots of people getting sick that need more care, and yet not enough care. And so that is something that MEND is really laser focused on, is how do we play a role in that conundrum? And we have lifted a platform that we think can really help. And the platform is called Upgrade, and it leverages the best of evidence-based nutrition and behavioral models to really support the acute care system to do a much better job of caring for patients. And I'm happy to unpack that for you as we go into the discussion.
Eziah, when I heard you say we're doing a good job of getting people sick, that's actually a little scary to me. That sounds so wrong. And then the sugar one I really struggle with, because 10x normal recommended numbers are like wacky and way out of control. So I'm obviously tempted to ask you, Eziah, above and beyond anything else that MEND does, is the sugar management a top priority? And then the challenge that you described of making people sick, what is MEND offering, A, for sugar management, and B, across the board in trying to make sure people don't get sick versus making sure that people actually doing a good job of getting people sick?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's common culprits, right? When we think about and you unpack metabolic syndrome, what are the underlying drivers? Your sugar is high, your stress levels and stress hormones are high, your inflammatory markers are high, you're getting glycation, et cetera. So it's the same set of things that reemerge over and over and over again. Of course, we can talk about the sedentary lifestyles and getting enough exercise, but we have developed solutions that are, again, evidence-based. And but what we mean by that, we call it nutri-pharma and not dietary supplements, because what we're doing is creating a class of solutions that has kind of three attributes that really differentiate it. One is a level of clinical study that is generally unmatched. So roughly 77% of supplements out there don't have a randomized trial behind them. Only 1% or less actually have a mechanistic study. You have actually gone into the biological mechanisms of what's taking place. So on that one parameter, clinical study, MEND is doing mechanistic studies. We're doing randomized trials. The second is third-party validation and testing, so that when you take a product, what is actually on the label, written on the label, is actually in the product. And you'll be surprised how often that's not true. And so we do third-party validation and testing. And finally, that the actual dosing that's in the product and the synergistic effects, et cetera, actually match the science. You'll be very surprised to learn when you pick up a product that may be claiming, for example, that'll help stimulate muscle protein synthesis. Well, okay, let's take leucine as one of the nutrients. You need 2.5 grams worth of leucine, where all the science and the evidence shows you're going to get muscle protein synthesis. I had one of our surgeon partners email me a product that they came across. It's marketing itself as a 40-plus wellness product for muscle. It had 1 gram of leucine in it. So it's not getting to the efficacious dose, even though they're marketing as such. So Med has differentiated on those 3 dimensions: efficacious dosing and synergistic effects, a body of clinical evidence, and then third-party testing, to have a really rigorous approach to how we develop. In the space of inflammation and cortisol and sugar, we have 2 products that will be marketed soon together as a metabolic kit. One is called Controlled Glucose, backed by a dozen plus randomized trials on the individual compounds. And then we've completed a randomized trial as well as an in-home use consumer study where we have validated that we can lower blood sugar levels and return them to normal levels. We can lower A1C. In the consumer study showed much better energy, stabilized mood, so on and so forth. All the benefits you're going to expect when you actually stabilize sugar. So that's great. And then on the other side, we have an inflammation product. We know inflammation, systemic inflammation, is the root cause of so much illness. Now, one of the other unfortunate things is in the world that we live in with dietary supplements is we can't talk about illness. We can't talk about disease because those are the FDA rules. And only drugs and pharma can do that. So we have to be very careful to caveat to say men is not designed to prevent or treat disease. However, a smart, intelligent person can make conclusions that if they make the right behavioral changes and address underlying factors like inflammation and sugar and cortisol, so on and so forth, that is in the long run going to help you prevent disease. So we have designed products that are backed by really good science and data that are addressing the most important factors that lead to illness. And we are very proud and very happy that the data that we have done in the lab is matching what we're hearing from consumers in terms of the impact that they're feeling.
Okay. Well, Zai, it seems to me that your solution is particularly relevant to professional athletes and sports teams. I'd love to hear from you how those types of entities are benefiting, if there are any you want to name or call out as being organizations that are leveraging it. But beyond that, is it applicable for the average Shri and PVSB to apply to not not that we're the average people, but how does the average Joe and Jane benefit? Is it surgical pre and post? Is good, what's the application for this?
Yeah, so the context and with professional sports is utilizing men is a little different than how you, myself, and Sri might actually utilize our products. In one scenario, and it's very similar in others. So we're very, very proud that organically, through word of mouth, 40 plus professional sports teams utilize men. We don't market to that population. They have utilized our products, and obviously they're very discerning. It's quite remarkable that a set of consumer out there that is so courted by brands has, through word of mouth, gained adoption. I unfortunately cannot share names. I wish I could, because if I could, Men would be a $1 billion plus company given the caliber of professional sports clients utilizing our products. I think very soon you're going to hear about one of the teams because their head doctor has become a huge fan of Men. And when people find out who this person is and who this team is, let's just say this: it's one of the top 3 capitalized firms in the world in terms of market value. A very, very esteemed brand. And the way professional sports is utilizing Men is kind of in 2 primary areas. One is when athletes injured or having a surgery, they're utilizing our solutions to support healing and recovery. And that is one of our cornerstones of where we really focus our energy, is getting pre and post-operative injury-related nutrition into the body, either through medicine and doctors or through the professional sports directly, to help support and accelerate healing and recovery. We've got really good published data and science on that area. The other area that teams are using Mend is in the area of performance, and one product in particular is our daily inflammation product. Obviously, as an athlete, inflammation and managing inflammation is one of the key things you want to do, because it's just the rigor and intensity of the abuse that your body is taking, where the low grade inflammation builds up. And so those are really two areas where they're reusing our products quite heavily. On the consumer side of things, clearly, if you, Suri, and I are injured, I want everybody to think about nutrition as a core modality. We're told to rest. We're told to perhaps ice when we're injured. We're not told about nutrition. And Mend is going to change that. Mend wants nutrition to become one of the core modalities and things that every single doctor talks about when someone's gone through any state of trauma, because your body needs nourishment, and the right nourishment can make or break the recovery process. And the other is we have solutions for everyday living. So sugar is hidden in everything we've talked about. 10x consumption of sugar. So we have controlled glucose as a product that, when used daily with your largest meal, the mechanism of action is actually helps prevent the breakdown of the sugar molecule. And when the sugar molecule is not small enough to get absorbed into the blood, it just passes through your system. So a certain amount of sugar is not going to get into your system, and you're going to normalize and stabilize A1C in sugar. So that's a product that you and I and everyone really should take that is concerned about managing sugar effectively. The second is the daily inflammation product that we spoke about. Has fantastic data on reducing key inflammatory biomarkers like IL-6, IL-8, et cetera. There's 4 or 5 of the key inflammatory markers that each one of us will encounter as we get older. And then finally, I gave a talk yesterday on something called sarcopenia and muscle-centric wellness, which is a topic that we want to lead on and that will be spoken about more and more and more. Just the profoundly important role muscle plays in your overall health. So there's 2 big groupings that are really important for the role of muscle. One is movement. And we take movement for granted, because when we have movement, we're doing it with automaticity and not really thinking about the value of the movement. But as we get older, like my mom is now, and we're having to think about how to design her bathroom and whether or not she can get her clothing on, movement becomes really, really critical, and the role of muscle in enabling movement becomes really, really critical. The second area is muscle plays a profoundly important role in metabolic health. It does a whole bunch of things, from regulating sugar to regulating hormones to storing energy, that are essential to good metabolic functioning. We don't think about muscle in that way. We only think about it in the first bucket. Oh, it's for looking good on the beach. It's for vanity. Not at all. Muscle is vitally important, and I encouraged everyone on the call that I had yesterday that you must today take action to start introducing the good habits of muscle management and muscle health if you want to live a good, healthy life and increase your well span. So we have a solution for that called Regenerate, which is, we think, best in class in terms of feeding your muscle the right nutrients to promote long-term muscle health. So there's everyday solutions and there's the acute solutions, which are relevant to the everyday person.
A reminder to audience, we're speaking to Eziah Syed, founder and CEO of Mend. Hey, the last time you were on the show, which has been over a year and a half or maybe a couple of years at this point, there's the obvious need states of sugar control, inflammation that you talk to for the everyday person, listeners of the show, etc. But a lot of the success of Mend, as well as success for patients' outcomes for even listeners on the show, depends on how well connected you are to care providers. So how does this work? What does the network look like? And has that grown since? I'm just curious to know what the update is.
Yeah, we've had a number of big developments on that front. So one is a relationship that we formed with FullScript. So FullScript is the 800-pound gorilla in taking natural solutions into the world of preventative health. So primarily working with prevention doctors, osteopathic, et cetera, this, that, the other, integrated medicine. Their primary channel is, they've got a very large network of integrated medicine. So they are carrying a product of ours called Heart Health, which has 20 published randomized trials supporting it, fantastic data on how it positively influences a number of key biomarkers and really in a class of its own. They've also recently taken on controlled glucose. So that's been a major development for us in that integrated medicine practitioners now have access to MEND through the FullScript platform. The other is MEND continues to expand our direct relationships with the medical community, primarily right now in the realm of surgeons and hospitals that are utilizing our solutions, not only the nutritional solutions, but the whole behavioral and digital model that we wrapped around it in perioperative care. Perioperative care, of course, is all the sets of behaviors that one should engage in going into a major surgery and all the sets of behaviors one should engage in post-major surgery to ensure that we minimize risk, that we get really good outcomes, we avoid things like readmission, complications, et cetera. Which, and I'll just illustrate for you as an example of how profound and powerful it can be. So my mother had a knee replacement done 2 years ago. And at the age of 79, she got a UTI. That UTI persisted for 3-4 months, caused her nightmare and headaches. She said, I felt like I was on the brink of depression because I didn't know there was a leak. So the UTI resolves. My mom gets a tooth pulled a year later. The UTI resurfaces. My mom falls into a severe fever for a week to the point where she got hospitalized, and she was in the hospital for a month. And we were very close to saying, okay, she's gone. She fell into severe delirium, psychosis, didn't recognize any of us, didn't know what planet she was on. And she looked like, she looked like a painting on a bed with a little protrusion for her head. And we thought, oh my God, she's in her final hours. That UTI with the right perioperative program, with the MEND upgrade program, would have been prevented. I can guarantee you that. We would have the right surveillance things in place. We would have had the right protocols in place. And we would have saved a month in a hospital and all the battery of tests and costs my mom went through. I would wager perhaps $1 million or more in cost that was totally avoidable because of a simple UTI that could have been prevented and managed. And this is what we're not doing because, again, I go back to remember how under pressure acute care is. They don't have time during the day. They're short-staffed. They're running around. They're trying to get the surgery done as quickly as possible and get you home. They don't have time to think about my mom's UTI. And this is a crisis, and it's resulting in billions of dollars of additional cost in our system. And with the right programs like Men's Upgrade Program, we can prevent this. And we're already showing that data. We have lots and lots of data to prove out that this works, and it's having a real impact.
Part of the attributes that you mentioned, the 3 attributes that differentiate you from your competition, one was the level of clinical trials that you've put your products through. You want to double click down on that for us because that's not something we often hear around the supplement business. Take us through the how you do this, the why you do it, and what do you think consumers should take from the fact that you put so much emphasis on this as part of your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, a really good clinical trial would be one that some investigator out there, typically an academic in a university or, usually it is in a university, says, I'm really interested in this domain. I'm looking for a solution. I've come across this company, MEND. I want to study their product. So it's investigator initiated. They're the ones that initiated it. There's usually grant funding behind it so that it's not biased in any way that MEND gave the money to do the study. And so there's a grant that funded it. There's an investigator that initiated it. A couple like MEND says, here, go study our product. We'll provide the product. We're out of the picture. So Dr. Hans Dreyer from University of Oregon, muscle physiologist, Dr. Aaron Owen, and a bunch of others in 2012, way back more than a decade ago, said, we're really interested in why there's so much muscle atrophy happening in total joint patients. And we wonder if a high dose of the specific essential amino acids might reduce that muscle atrophy. And then if we do reduce that muscle atrophy, does that result in better function, better return to function, and other outcomes? So the first study was done by Dr. Hans Dreyer, Dr. Aaron, and others, and it was published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation. And it showed exactly that if you actually have a patient ingest essential amino acids pre and post-operatively, you actually get you get attenuation of muscle atrophy. And how do we measure that? We do MRIs. We do, in the case of others that have studied, you can actually take the physical measurements. And it actually resulted in better return to function. How do you do that? You take a battery of physical function score, standardized tests that you do on physical function. So we published the first paper in 2013. Our partners did. And then in 2018, so that first study said, okay, this stuff works. The second study was, again, a randomized placebo-controlled trial, double-blind. In a double-blind study, the investigator doesn't know which product the patient's getting. The patient doesn't know what product that they're getting, whether they're getting placebo or the real product. And that's essential to really good design. And the second one was focused on, okay, let's see if we can replicate the attenuation of muscle atrophy, return to function, but now let's see if there's any potential adverse effects. And we showed that there was no adverse effect to the blood results. Then finally, let's go to the mechanistic studies. And remember, I said only 23% of products out there actually have a randomized trial on it in the world of supplements. Then only less than 1% have a mechanistic study. So we went further to understand, okay, what's actually happening here? And Dr. Dreyer did biopsies of the muscle tissue and actually went under the microscope to say when a patient is on MEND, the essential amino acids, what is happening mechanistically? And so under the microscope, he saw that there was a proliferation of muscle T cells. There was a reduction in IL-6, TNF-alpha, M1 macrophages. And so now we can start to explain, okay, what's actually happening mechanistically to explain the outcomes that we're seeing. So that is very rare. And what's important to the consumer to know is if you want a product that works and you can reliably trust that there's really good science and data, it's something that your doctor would feel comfortable giving to you. It really needs to have that robustness of clinical evidence, because through the examples I've given where the dosing is not sufficient or it contains something in the product that's not even on the label or is missing something that is on the label, all these things are really, really important. And you'd be surprised at the lack of rigor out there in the world of this space. And that's why we're calling it NutriPharma, to not confuse it with dietary supplements, because this is really a new class. And there are a handful of companies out there that are doing really good work in this area of developing this NutriPharma type of great product.
I'm glad to hear that word NutriPharma, which, look, I got nothing against pharma companies. I work for maybe the world's greatest pharma company, Johnson & Johnson. But I do have a question for you, Eziah, because you're squarely in this space. Care providers' knee-jerk reaction to any disease need states is pharma. What you talked a little bit about eating natural. You talked about the muscle atrophy problem and why that should be a huge priority. But is there a connection between eating natural, consuming natural wellness, and the power of the mind to manifest health using natural wellness to avoid health problems as a solution, as opposed to knee-jerk pharma as the solution?
Yeah, no question. I mean, there's clearly a mind-body connection in wellness, and your brain is actually very quickly processing what you ingest, and that has a biopsychosocial type of impact on the hormones that are being released or the mechanisms that get activated when you're ingesting broccoli versus you're ingesting sugar. And there is a emotive component to that. Broccoli is going to make you feel different than when you're having the highs and lows of sugar. So there's a deep connection there. I think, with respect to kind of getting this NutriPharma thing kind of more mainstream, certainly when I started Mend, now a number of years ago, there was, in the orthopedic community, in the surgical community where we went after, there was a level of ambivalence at best, skepticism more likely. When I go and speak to surgeons today, what they're saying to me is, we already know all the data. This is an established domain. So Ortho Star is, one of our partners that's rolling out Mend across the entire network. Their chief medical officer presented at their partners meeting before I spoke before the audience, and he said there are now 200 plus quality clinical trials that demonstrate the value of nutrition and good surgical outcomes. That is indisputable evidence. Okay, so now UMD are way behind the curve if you're not embracing this. And so it's coming. Nutrition as a core modality in medicine is coming in a big way, and we want to be one of the major players that makes that happen.
I want you to call that out again for the benefit of our listeners. So 200 trials that already exist. What's the outcome again, Eziah?
So in the surgical space that I was specifically speaking to, it's everything from enhanced wound healing better muscle, better return to function, lower inflammation, improve blood albumin, lower risk of readmission. There is a whole host of, including actually better energy, less nausea. There's a whole host of studies that show very significant impacts to a patient that's going into surgery if they follow a pre and post surgical protocol on nutrition.
And how do we get the word out, Eziah, that there have been studies like this and people should take their mind-body healing a little bit more seriously than they do today? And I don't blame people for not doing it because it's all awareness and knowledge. We've been fed data from childhood that pharma is the only way.
Yeah, and this is one of the ways, Sri. Thank you for doing this with folks like yourself that have a platform that give a topic like this audience. I spend an extraordinary amount of time and energy on making sure I'm having these conversations. They take time, they take energy, but I think it's vitally important. So when a host of a show reaches out to me and says, "Would you come onto my show?" I don't ever say no. And the reason I don't ever say no is because of that reason, that we got to get the education out there in mass. We spend a lot of our energy in working with the most influential doctors. So Dr. Paul Wishmeyer of Duke University is one of our key advisors. He is by far and away the most published and cited academic in the realm of perioperative nutrition. He helped to formulate our last solution, has said publicly, and it's a quote that he will, when I post it on LinkedIn, he'll always share it with his community that says, "This product is truly unique and urgently needed." Truly unique and urgently needed by the world's foremost authority in this domain. And so we're working hard to ensure that the education and awareness is something that we're always pressing the button on, because you're right. It started, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be.
Eziah, let me finish this out and thank you for this fascinating conversation. What's next for Mend? I'm particularly interested in understanding other need states that you think you can address or adjacent to what you're already focused on. What should we be looking for from Mend in the coming years?
So our behavioral platform is live and scaling in orthopedics. We are completed design and we'll be lifting in surgical oncology with a major health system in the next month and a half. And so that'll demonstrate that our behavioral model, the idea that a patient will benefit tremendously from support, very hands-on support, coaching, guidance, monitoring through an entire episode of care. You're not on your own. Okay? We're not only interested in the cut. We're interested in supporting you through that entire episode and using that as an opportunity for behavioral change. So we'll be moving into surgical oncology space. And the other part that we're going to put a lot of energy into is our everyday products that really we think, the controlled glucose product, the daily inflammation product, the heart health product, get out there into the masses, because we're again in a crisis, and we really need to start taking these solutions that are easy to adopt into behaviors. So I start my every day; it's become automatic for me. I take a little shot of olive oil, I take my handful of mixed nuts, and the first thing I do is I go grab my set of NutraPharma products and I take it with this veggie concoction juice that I take. It takes me 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes, I should say. And I'm doing that without thinking. It's become a habit and a behavior. And I really want to work hard, because products without the behavioral support and the behavioral change are not going to last, right? We need both together. And that's why we've worked on a behavioral model that really marries to a food as medicine, evidence-based nutrition model. And we think that's what's going to create at-scale impact in society, is we can train those behaviors that will stay with a person for a lifetime.
You're going to make me buy olive oil now, because I just sent a text to my family saying, "Hey, Eziah's here coaching the world on take a shot of olive oil in the morning with some nuts," followed by, I'll go to the website. Obviously, is it still men.me? So I'm going to go check out what new pharma products to start the day, especially around inflammation, sugar management. I think the earlier in life these are done, the better the outcomes will be over the long run, right? So let me remind our audience that you can find all of our content on the website, cpgguys.com as the URL. And if you think you or your company has thought leadership to contribute to a community discussion, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com. Again, that's contact@cpgguys.com. And maybe you can join us on the podcast like Eziah did to discuss such an important topic as wellness. Don't forget to drop us a rating at cpgguys.com on the navigation bar up top, because that tells Peter and me how we're doing, whether we're having the right dialogues and the right guests on our show. Thank you for the 32,000 plus followers on LinkedIn. This show doesn't exist without you. Thank you for the DMs, clicks, likes, messages, suggestions, everything you do to build this show. Eziah, thanks for making time on a Thursday afternoon and having such an important dialogue with Peter and me on wellness, human wellness overall. We do appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Peter and Sri, thank you for taking on the hard work. I know it's non-trivial work to put this show together, and for taking on really important topics that health and wellness is paramount. And we are, like I said, sleepwalking into a major crisis. And it's going to take all of our collective voices, energy, and effort to turn the tide, because it's unsustainable. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Hey, Peter, what a pleasure doing this with you. And then two sentences that have kind of stuck out in my head, Peter, which are going to haunt me a little bit now until you're going to tell us to somebody and make them go away. One is, we're doing a good job of making people sick as a community and as the world. And the second one is, we're sleepwalking into crisis. So, Peter, what's our learnings from this episode that can help mitigate both the sleepwalking and help people not get sick?
I don't know about the sleepwalking, but if you think about common life events among humans on a linear spectrum, one end being birth and in the other direction being things like joint replacement. Shri, you and I are playing the back nine of life right now. And so joint replacement is in our future, much more so than as we look in the rearview mirror.
Thanks for the reminder, Peter.
I know. As we look in the rearview mirror to the day the doctor smacked our butt when we were born, but to make us cry. But
are you saying it's going to be tough to walk down all the way to row 3 in Yankee Stadium behind home plate and walk back up?
We are going to be hobbling, Shri. So let's prepare for that. I like the fact that Mend is trying to create an alternative modality for a natural modality for health that, as Eziah mentioned, surgery is not sustainable for a healthcare strategy in this country. And to your point, he said, we're not just doing we're doing a fabulous job of getting people sick. I think the sarcasm is there. And that's by virtue of the fact that our society is moving from eating whole foods to almost entirely, highly processed foods, where we live a sedentary lifestyle. We're sitting inside instead of outside working the land. We're ingesting 10x the daily sugar recommendation. I like the fact that Mend has created these product attributes that they base their solutions around. One is a level of unmatched clinical study on their supplements, third-party validation and testing, and an actual dosing that matches the science. I think all three of those come together to make Mend a differentiated product line. And the fact that the message here is nutrition should be a core modality discussion for doctors that are treating trauma and injury. That we need to be, Shri, you and I need to start lifting weights a little bit more, getting our muscles, not just the muscles between our ears, but the ones on the rest of our body. That they've done a great job of trying to connect to institutions relevant for their product care, things like Full Script, connections to surgeons and hospitals, that and that they've ultimately, double clicking down on the research that they've done. Their clinical research was clearly focused on outcomes, and they've been able to deliver that. And the evidence of that clinical research indicates that over 200 trials around there we go. I knew you would help me out there if I just paused long enough. And that, at the end of the day, that we're going to get this change only through a combination of factors. Yeah, we need really effective products, but we need behavior change. We actually have to turn them into habits. That is important. That's the only thing. Products plus behavior equals impact at scale. That's what I heard very clearly. So very interesting conversation, particularly poignant for you and me, Shri. I think we need to start living living what we're talking about with our audience. So let's you and I have a little conversation after today's episode about how we do that.
There's the you and me world, Peter, but our audience is not radically different from us. Like I would say 70, 80% of our listeners.
If you and I can do it, Shri, they can do it.
True. Very.
And anyone, this is accessible to anyone, guys. It's starting with really. So in my talk yesterday, I said if you go from trying to run 1 block to trying to run 3,000 blocks, chances are that habit's not going to stick. But if you go from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, and you build that slowly, it's remarkable how quickly it can stick and how it is a cascading exponential benefit that you can derive from it if you just start small.
Well said, Eziah. That's a wrap of this episode. What a great topic for us to have on wellness. Hopefully we can bring you more content on just wellness in the future. Maybe Eziah and Men will be a part of that, TBD. But thank you. That's a wrap, and we will see you soon on another episode of the CPG Guys.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.